when we're trying to tune in to our intuition, we're trying to suss out what's in our field, what is ours and what is not. It's very important to register that sometimes that doubt or confusion, or maybe what we're calling being just disconnected, is not that you aren't tuned in, it's that you are accessing the void space. And the void space is a extremely enriching, potent, powerful, psychic energy to be in, okay? Now, an easy way to start to comprehend the void space is like the womb space, okay? I just mentioned that most every culture has a creation story in which all that is, the birth of creation starts in the void or in chaos or, in the turbulent waters, what have you. This is what I'm currently referring to as the void space. It's where we all come from, and it's where we all go back to. It is plasmatic in nature, okay? We live and exist in a vast sea of plasma. Plasma is multidimensional. We experience it in many different ways. We know we have we know we have plasma in our blood, right? We understand that astrophysicists study plasma all the time. There's physical plasma. There is plasma that is represented if you're watching a sci-fi movie and they are showing you an extraterrestrial and they're covered in that ectoplasm. That's a form of plasma. There's etheric plasma. Thought forms have been measured. They are measurable because they are a form of plasma. The void is a vast sea of plasma. And it is a space in which we all exist in when we are not in motion, when we are in a resting state. We're always connected to the void, and it's very easy to mistake the void for disconnection, because by nature, the void is a space of nothingness. It is nothing and all that is. It is the epitome of the creation point. So it is pre-creation, pre-matter, pre-formation. It's where all of your amazing ideas come from, okay? It's the space in which you visit in dream time if you're not being sucked into the simulation, right? So it's very easy to mistake being in the void space with just being disconnected or not tuned in or unable to access intuition or not feeling your emotional body, what have you, okay? Those can exist simultaneously. It does not mean that anytime you feel disconnected or apathetic that you actually are empathetic and you're in the void. Both can be happening. Though recognizing the void space is really, really important, because that's information to start understanding what's going on and what's happening. The void space is also highly recognizable when you're experiencing some form of grief. If you've ever been through depression, if you've been in heartbreak, if you have lost a loved one, it does not matter if they're a fur baby or if they were, a human flesh vessel. We often are cast into the void in these types of experiences, and there is a sensation of emptiness and nothingness. And depending on how we interpret it, we could perceive it as a very lonely, isolating place. Though, remember, we came from the void. We were in our mother's womb, which is a cocoon of void, in which nurtured us and gave us the time and cocooning that we require in order to create this body, to receive everything that we need. It's a place of stasis. It is an allowance. It's a suspension. It is an extremely pivotal, imperative, required space and dimensionality in order to simply exist. Hey, Mommy Mars, welcome in. Appreciate you. Mommy Mars, pardon that Streamlabs little thing there. They have such strict requirements or filters for the messages. So sorry, it is telling you to avoid your emojis. I love your emojis. Thank you so much. Okay, so the void space is something that we all experience, and it is one of the most helpful experiences when it comes to learning how to, first of all, attune to your body, right? Attunement. If you guys don't know what that is, let me know in the comments and I'll further expand on it. But attunement is pivotal when it comes to you understanding where you're at in any now given moment and how you're relating to other people, okay? Those that don't know how to attune are usually highly triggered, right? They have difficulty with relationships. They're checked out of their body. They don't understand what they're feeling in any now moment, and they're reactive. Hey, Needeep, hi, how are you? Hey, you inspired me to change my topic today. So thank you for our conversation earlier. So when we have an understanding and hopefully begin to cultivate an intimate relationship with the void space, our intuition catapults exponentially because it's where it comes from. The void space is infinite creation. It is creator. It is the all that is. It is everything and nothing. It is exponential, right? It is beyond our ability to grasp it. And it is where everything comes from. And I often say, and I was talking to Needeep about this earlier, everything that is in existence in the etheric realm, in ether, is not necessarily existing in the physical yet. It has the potential to be. It has the potential to manifest into matter, though everything that exists in the physical is simultaneously existing in the etheric realm. Okay? I hope that makes sense. It's one reason in which those of us that know that entities and beings exist and that spirits have what we term an afterlife, right? But that's not really the best term for it, but you know what I mean. Just because we can't physically see them anymore does not mean they don't exist. They're existing in the etheric space, in the astral space. They're still a part of the consciousness experience. So when we start to get used to the seemingly uncomfortable experience of the void, you can hyper tune into your senses. And the void space is a place that has been very intimate for you until you grew out of it and forgot about it. And usually the biggest imposition to start pulling you away from your comfort and familiarity in the void is when you're starting to learn language. Language is highly inefficient. Okay. Language is an unfortunate way that we spell cast and pulls us away from our extrasensory perceptions. It is so inefficient in expressing everything that we're trying to communicate. You know, there's stats that humans still utilize 70% of communications that happen is still nonverbal for humans. So imagine what it is for plants and animals. And I'm hyper aware when I'm telepathically communicating, of course with plants. I mean, it's really obvious with plants, but also with animals, that language is obviously not the way in which they communicate. They don't even prefer thought forms. My dog tells me all the time, hi Jody, welcome in honey, that he's like, humans think too much. Chloe, you think too much. And I'm like, you don't think a lot? And he said, no. And I have to say, I did judge. The first time he said that, I thought, oh, maybe he's just not that smart. Which is absolutely inaccurate. He's like, no, I'm just present. I'm in a space of just sensing, right? They use their senses. Thoughts are inefficient. They're not trustworthy. they usually, even though we think they're super fast, right? We have 30,000 plus thoughts, they say, a day. They're actually slow compared to your other senses, okay? And so thinking, mental space, is an inefficient way in which to communicate, to connect, to tune in. Yeah, Mommy Mars, exactly. And our senses happen way before we have a thought. We have entrained ourselves to be more aware, often, some of us, of our thoughts than our senses, but this is happening way before this, okay? And I know I'm diverging a little bit. I'll get back to the void, I promise. But that was one thing I wanted to talk about today is last live, we talked about demons, right? We talked about the hierarchy and respects of the principalities of the demonic and the angelic realms. Now, demon, if we break down this word, it's a very ancient word that comes from daemon. Daemons were actually just nature spirits, right? And then we've kind of inverted it a bit. But if we break down the word demon, we get daemon, which is of the moon, okay? And now this exact translation popped up on my TikTok, so, I can't take full credit for looking up the translation, though you can look it up very easily. Now, if we think of the moon, moon is emotions. What is the definition of emotion? Can anybody tell me without having to Google it? What is the difference between your feelings and your emotions? Okay, pop it in before I answer this question, because this is exactly why it's very important to understand how demons get in, how they access us in the first place, okay? Now, a lot of us understand, how do you get hooked? Knee deep, we talked about this today. How do we get tethered? How do we get hooked? How do entities attach? What do they need in order to do that? Mommy Mars says, feelings are what we perceive. Emotion is how we react. Yes, it's very, very close to what I was going to say. So, definition of feeling is sensation. It's a sense, whether in which we're having a sensation of physical touch, feeling, or we're having an internal or interoceptive feeling or sense. Something doesn't feel right. An emotion, as Mommy Mars is saying, is how we react. An emotion is when we put thought to a feeling. It is how we interpret feelings. So in order to create an emotion, and a lot of you who are in the spiritual community have heard emotion, talk about energy in motion and emotion. In order to create an emotion, we have to apply thought to feeling, which means feeling, sensation happens first. And then we place on top of it a thought form. We start interpreting, we start perceiving, as Mommy Mars said. There's a moment, there's a fraction of a second or whatever it is, where we go from feeling to thought, to interpretation, to emotion. That moment, that schism, that void space is where the demons hook in. It's in that moment, okay? And that is where we effort to attune to get so sensitive. Ideally, we'd love to catch it before they hook in, right? Though, understanding, just at least in theory, conceptually right now, that's where they gain access. Demons, entities, all these things hook in usually through your emotional body. That is the most efficient way for them to access you. It's also very efficient for them to hook into your sexual body. Now, of course, they're accessing your energy, your etheric body, your astral body, what have you. But in order to anchor, right, and affect us thoroughly to where we're not just clearing it out pretty quickly, it's accessing some kind of a wound. We call this also a miasm. A miasm is when an emotional traumatic experience anchors into our flesh. And it usually is when the plasma of our fascia, our myofascia, we talked about this the other day, experiences an emotion that affects you energetically, and your myofascia is connected to both spirit and physical. It's a beautiful bridge in between. In my opinion, your myofascia and your cerebrospinal fluid are two of the main ways in which your spirit is communing with your physical and your energetic bodies. It's a way in which we can go through both of these dimensions. It's an access way. So miasms anchor into your physical body, you manifest a physical ailment, and if any of you guys, you probably on this channel, you've already done plenty of healing work, you find that some kind of physical dis-ease stems from an emotional trauma or wounding, a schism. We've anchored it. It got stuck, it got trapped because we didn't allow that energy to stay in motion. Emotion, energy, emotion. Like Mommy Mar says, we reacted. And as soon as you react, boom, it anchors. It doesn't keep flowing. Okay? So that void space, the moments, the fraction of a second where you are starting to perceive and process and interpret what it is you are feeling as it's becoming an emotion, is where these entities and demons and all that sort of stuff slides right in. So, going back to the void is a very important place in which to get familiar with. Once you're tuning into psychic space, the backdrop, your canvas, is the void. Okay? And so getting familiar with the frequency signature of the void, memorizing that space of nothingness and everything, will help you to recognize when other energies are in the field. It'll help you tremendously. It'll also help you to recognize what's missing. So when I'm reading somebody's energy and I'm tracking, right, their trauma and their emotions, just like a tracker, just like somebody who's really adept at looking at the environment and noticing there's a tiny little paw print and there's a broken leaf and that the wind has moved the straw this way and something went that way. You're tracking energy through the field. And in order for me to do that, I rely on the void and what is not present, okay? And the void is also a space in which we escape to. So all of us, even if we're not conscious of it, have experienced dissociating. We've experienced cognitive dissonance. We've experienced some kind of fracturing of our spirit or energy, right? If you are somebody who tends to lean towards avoidance, void dance. When we are avoiding something, we are dancing in the void. We may not be conscious of it, but we're really using that space, right? So it's really important to get used to memorizing what the void is and what it's not. Thank you, Mommy Mars. She agrees with me. So the void is a space that, in regard to the title of this live, I said, the void and narcissists. How does the void relate to narcissists? Now, again, I'll preface, narcissist is a huge, over-discussed topic. It's a word that's thrown around way too much, labeled on a lot of people that I don't have the accreditation or accolades to properly label or deem somebody a narcissist, though I am a being that can choose to perceive somebody is for my own reasonings, and we can all do that. And I also like to utilize the understanding that it's a word that can get thrown around a lot and it can be very dangerous and hurtful, so be careful with this. Hey, I'm back. Thank you so much for liking the video so many times. It's very, very helpful. Thank you guys for hitting the hype button and the likes. That's one easy, quick way you can give me a appreciation for, chatting, connecting with you guys. I really am thankful for that. So narcissists live in the void. In order to qualify as that label, it's somebody who is more in the void than in this experience. Their emotional capacity is like 0 to 5 when we're, at 70 to 100, okay? Their more than average experience is living within the void. Depending on where somebody falls or swings within the pathological spectrum, right, which is a very broad topic. So a narcissist is, in like one part of a gray area of the pathological spectrum, and then we can swing all the way to psychopathy and sociopathy, right? So there's a huge range and all the things in between, a lot of labels. Though a common experience is they are more beast-like, they're more animalistic. Now, I don't know about the proper brain chemistry of a narcissist, but I do know that somebody with psychopathy and sociopathy has a smaller amygdala. They physiologically have less of an ability to process and experience emotions, okay? And if you look at the emotions that most of these people experience, they're a lot more like Mommy Mars was talking about. They're a lot more reactive. They can get sad, they can be happy, they can get angry, they can get excited. It's a lot more base, right? It's not intricate, complex emotional experiences. It's shallow, which is one aggravating point of experiencing and engaging with a narcissist. Now, the void space is a place in which a lot of their energy and time is spent. Knee Deep says, "This is greatly adding to my understanding." Oh my goodness, thank you. And I can tell you, I agree so much. Yeah, I'm so glad you resonate with this. I appreciate that feedback too. And you guys let me know if something's not landing. I'm happy to always change topics. So feel free to chime in and let me know, what you are wanting to learn and maybe what you're not interested in. Very open to constructive criticism. So narcissists are, first of all, Knee Deep and I were talking about this earlier. They're very charming is one thing that is usually common across the board with narcissists or anybody. Well, I shouldn't say anybody. That's not true. Let's just talk about narcissists. So they're usually very charming. They're very gregarious. They're often outgoing. Doesn't have to be, right? But common enough, which is why they're so captivating initially. They love to love bomb, okay? So these experiences are something that attracts one in, draws you in, okay? They're often also, they have an inflated sense of ego and self-esteem. And all of us are attracted to confidence. So this is one way in which they're magnetic. Now, if we start to look at, I was talking again to Knee Deep about this earlier. Alex Hormozy had a post on his social media the other day, and I'm going to paraphrase this completely, but he was talking to the effect of how maturity, one aspect of maturity is understanding that there are characteristics that you may really enjoy or appreciate about somebody, even if their negative characteristics override the positive, which is very common in anybody who's dealing or dealt with narcissists. It starts out great, like a lot of relationships, right? You're attracted to what's positive and enjoyable. And then negative, what we would deem negative experience, start overriding and compounding, and those become too much to handle, regardless of how much positive there was. Though, tell me what if this rings true for you guys. Something that I've done in regard to becoming defensive in these relationships and working to protect myself is I tend to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I will begin to demonize them and fully, hard stop, which is common, I think, for people's reaction when they get fed up with dealing with narcissistic personalities, is there, as Knee Deep and I were talking about earlier, there's such a huge boundary violation, and it happens so consistently over and over that the big finale reaction is huge, and it can create a hard stop, a complete, this is it, we're done. And it can seem as an overreaction to those that obviously don't have the details of the compounding experiences, right? And in those times, it's very easy to say they're all bad. Demonize them, no, get away from me, you're dangerous, you're unhealthy, you're toxic, right? Whatever it is, that kind of statement gets thrown around a lot. Though that type of reactivity, while totally understandable, and I've been through it a lot, is a major piece of why you can't get out of this loop cycle with this person, okay? So anybody who has experienced narcissistic networks understands that it is a huge quagmire. It is as if you've walked into a thicket, and the more you move around, the more you get slashed and scratched and tangled and hooked up, and now you're stuck. That's how it can seem, and it can be overwhelming and infuriating and all the other experiences, to say the least. But one reason to that is because of our overreactivity, which is something that they are very good at triggering people to do. Mommy Mars says, yes, after the falling out with my closest cousin, it's easy to demonize when sensing something about somebody. Yeah, and it's a total understandable defense mechanism. I mean, I constantly find it so incredible, the defense mechanisms that we come up with, and usually these start and anchor in childhood. I just find it profound. If you guys have done any research around defense mechanisms, there are so many. And when you really start to look at them and dissect them, they're very complex and intricate. They're really efficient in order to get the job done of whatever the specific defense mechanism was built to do. And they're very hard to deprogram once we've anchored them. And one big reason for that is, if we look back if we're looking at Paleolithic theory, okay, our fear response was a matter of life or death. We were so hyper attuned to reacting through fear or danger because predator was a very real threat. At that time, you could be eaten alive if you were to close your eyes and turn your back too long, right? And so in those experiences, we're wired to put that at the forefront of our experience, which is also one reason why it's so easy to get stuck in negative critical thoughts, right? When we get in this role of complaining and nitpicking on people or only noticing the negative, this type of thing. Because at one point in our existence, could have been many points in our existence, it was a very primary, efficient way in which for us to survive. Though now we're in a place where we need to quell that. We need to calm that down, which is difficult to do when it's overactive. And any of us that have done any research in understanding how betrayal trauma works and what happens to your nervous system when you're going through these, traumatic betrayal experiences and PTSD and all of this, you don't have the physiological ability to calm yourself down. So you're constantly stuck in this defensive fight or flight. And that's a very painful, confusing, overwhelming place to be in. And I completely understand. If you guys are experiencing that, please chime in. I know what that's like. It's a horrible experience. And it takes a tremendous amount of work to get out of it. Knee Deep says, definitely have felt that way for sure. And I think, yes, a lot of people can resonate with this. And there's always been, and it's relative, right? It doesn't mean that, just because you were traumatized by somebody, that they're a bad person, that they're negative. Especially as a child, we're interpreting things. Sometimes we anchor a really significant emotional wound in our experience that didn't even register for the other person because it wasn't their intention, right? And so going back to what Alex Hormozy was talking about, it takes a very mature person. It's a part of wisdom to recognize that even while you're noticing and maybe fixating on the negative of somebody or their poor characteristics, there were also good characteristics that humanize them, and it's very helpful to hold on to them. Not in any way that gives you false hope, but if only to save yourself from getting stuck in the trap of continuing to exchange energy with this person. Even if you have physically removed yourself from them, if you're still mulling it over, if you're still emotionally triggered, you still have a relationship with their energy through the void space, okay? And you're fully healed from these types of experiences when you can think of them and have no feeling towards them whatsoever. When it is simple to offer them love and wish them well, and even at some point you can reminisce on the nicer, more enjoyable qualities of them and let go of the rest. I watched a video on a self-labeled, he was probably diagnosed a narcissist, though he resonated with it, and he actually works with narcissists to help them work better in society, to not be such a douche, basically, to be like an ethical narcissist, let's put it that way. And he was taught, Mommy Mars says, yes, especially when triggered. Right, when we're triggered, we want to focus on the negative, and it's all or nothing. And again, while that's understandable, it's a very immature way to process, okay? And most of us have experienced what it's like to be on both sides of a conversation where somebody says, you always do this, or you never do this, which is usually not true. And it's really triggering because in that moment, they're choosing to see you as like a total problem, your entire relationship, instead of being balanced and measured, right? So this narcissist was saying that he hates himself. He self-loathes. And in his opinion and experience, all narcissists do. And he says, people think we love ourselves because we self-aggrandize and we think we're better than other people. But just because we have a big ego and we might think we're better or smarter or whatever, we still hate ourselves inside our being. And if we step back and look at the understanding of mirror projection, then that becomes very clear that that's accurate, because most of us who study and have experienced the mirror projector dynamic that is always happening in relationships, doesn't mean it's negative. It's just something we all do, right? It's a part of psychology. Is if somebody is willing to treat you like shit and dismiss you and devalue you and reject you and manipulate you constantly and all these things, right? If they're willing to treat you that way, like scum, that's absolutely what they feel and think of themselves. Doesn't mean it's conscious, but we only treat others the way we treat ourselves. Point blank. It's just a fact of how it is. Okay? And we might not be as harsh to ourselves as we have to be to others, but again, if you're a loving, caring, self-nurturing human that's dealing with a personality disorder like this, you're going to put firm boundaries, but you're not necessarily going to be nasty and negative to them. You're just going to value your own self-care. And that is very telling of how you treat yourself, okay? So understanding and recognizing the void space that is experienced in this is also your way out of this situation. So most people who have studied any of this or watched any professionals talk about how to deal with narcissists, the number one tool they're going to give you is gray rocking. It's when you act as a gray rock. You are emotionless. You offer nothing. Okay? You do not react. You don't show any expression, right? And this creates a situation where they don't have anything to bounce off of. And narcissistic supply is something that they require in order to get fed. Now, let's kind of add a dimension into this experience. It's something I also wanted to tap into that I've been thinking about a lot. One thing that helps me to detach and stay observational in dealing with anyone and everyone, including myself, is the understanding that all of us are experiencing entities hopping in and out of our field. Some people are possessed. Some people are depressed by entities or triggered by entities. And if you can learn through reading frequency signatures, Knee Deep is very good at this. She is well trained at reading frequency signatures and looking beyond the veil, looking through the human in front of you, if they are a human, and seeing the entity. Now, again, it does not mean that the entity is a horrible being. Okay, a lot of entities also run the gamut in their energies, right? I know that gets into a very layered topic, but one thing you've done right there, or even just presuming, and I'm not saying this in a way where you're going to demonize them, but I'm saying they are currently being controlled or duped by another energy or entity. It could be a demon, right? But again, we had a discussion a few lives ago of how demons aren't something to be feared, right? They're a wily coyote. They're an inversion of what we know to be loving and spirit-filled, okay? So they're not something that we necessarily want to be dealing with unless you are a satanic worshiper or working to gain a leg up on the sins that they represent, which a lot of people do. A lot of people covet greed, and they want money, and they want power, and they want seduction, and all of that. So you do you. I'm not judging you. I'm just looking at the anatomy and dynamics of it, right? Knee Deep says, I see them in some ways as teachers. Exactly. Lots to learn. Exactly. And one thing that's important to know that we spoke on last live is you better believe that beings that have a primary existence in whatever you want to term it, fourth dimensional space and above, the astral realms, the etheric realms, the energy spaces, that's their home court advantage. They understand the rules, they understand the laws, doesn't mean they follow them. But they are very well versed in how to do things and how to navigate and how to manipulate and what not to do. And they bank on our ignorance to those experiences. So yes, you can learn a hell of a lot from them, and they are willing to teach, right? And so understanding that, first of all, you're dealing with an entity or an influence, right? It could just be a thought form, right? A lot of us have reacted on negative thoughts. And I've spoken before, there was a practitioner, I was listening to an audio session one time, and she had mentioned how all relationships, you're actually just having relationships with your thoughts about this person. And I really liked that because it's true. However, like an extreme example of that is when you put somebody on a pedestal. That's not the reality of the situation. You're making them greater than they actually are. They're no longer a peer on your level. You've raised them way up, which means inevitably they're going to fall and you're going to devalue them. Though it's a relationship with your thoughts, not who they actually are, not the reality of the situation. So you see the entity, and one thing that does immediately is it gives the human back their humanity, okay? Because now you're understanding that they're simply playing host to another experience. And then you start to understand, it makes it easier unless you get super triggered. Yeah, Knee Deep says 100%. Unless you're super triggered by entities and them anyway, and you could be, that's okay. We all experience this. It's very difficult not to be triggered, right? Though, even in hindsight, if you're going back to study and suss out the situation that you just went through, you can see, first of all, why it might be acting that way, okay? And they're going to be closer to an animal than an empathic human. And one huge mistake that most people do, and of course it's common because we're not versed in this, because it's so asinine and foreign for somebody to be acting like this. To a normal human being, it's like incomprehensible. The only reason we can begin to understand it is because unfortunately we've had enough exposure to it, right? So you're like, what the hell is happening with this person? Who would act this way? But they're more like an animal. And of course an animal is going to act that way. You wouldn't necessarily blame an animal for acting that way, right? Most people know you don't run up to a brown bear, and try to give him a hug. Like, that's on you, right? So now, mind you, this human has a skin suit that tricks you. It makes it more difficult. They're not obvious like a brown bear, but once you register that's what you're dealing with, then you can see, oh, okay, I'm dealing with more of an animal. Now you have to shift your behavior and understand their behavior. And this is where it gets really good and detective-like. And that's where I, in my own experience, now gray rocking has been something that's been very efficient for me, though I tweak it. I was telling Knee Deep earlier, I like to watch a lot of professional negotiators. One of my favorite is Chase Hughes. Another one that I really enjoy, I forget his name, but his company name is Black Swan. And they talk a lot about, Chase Hughes doesn't term it this term might be Black Swan, but they're both doing the same tactic, and they call it tactical empathy. And so you respond to the intention, not the emotional reactivity, okay? So first you look at what are they intending to do? And Chase Hughes lays out two acronyms. One is FOG. So their intention is usually going to be, or where they're coming from is usually fear, obligation, and guilt. So they're usually trying to trigger in you some kind of a fear, an obligation, or a guilt. So first you suss that out. And then you look at the next acronym, which he calls KAVA, which is control, attention, validation, and acceptance. And so you start to say, what is it they're trying to do here? I hear them say something to me that is meant to invoke an emotional reactivity so they can keep me engaged and weaken me. It's a part of the manipulation tactic, but look behind it. What is it they're needing, right? Are they wanting me to feel guilty for something? Is that their intent? Because they're trying to gain control? Are they wanting validation? Are they wanting acceptance? What is here? And then once you register that, regardless of the tactics they're using, you can start to negotiate with the needs and the intentions. And this is how you start responding in a way that's highly tactical without giving them the narcissistic supply that they're looking for. And by doing this, you're bypassing the entire manipulation, and now you're working within the void. Because you are 2 to 3 layers behind what's being presented in face value, which is a huge asset and leg up for any individual working with people like this. One reason that it is extremely difficult to get rid of a freaking narcissist or anybody on that pathological spectrum. Again, what Knee Deep and I were talking about, if you were to look at them energetically, they are infested with etheric parasites in their field. And this came up with us earlier in E-Deep too, because I was looking at one, this person would be like termed like a grandiose narcissist. Very, very charming, very outgoing, a person I'm thinking of right now. And I remember looking at their field energetically, and just nematode was all over it. Just full nematode, which was interesting to me because I'd been looking at etheric parasites for years, but that word never came up for me etherically. And I like looking at the very specific differences energetically. And so it just speaks to a way in which the energy changes a little bit. But anyway, they're infested with parasites. They are a parasite themselves. They leech energy. They live within a void space, so they always have to siphon and consume energy. It's never enough. They don't know how to create their own. They can only consume, right? They are a consumer. They don't know how to generate it and sustain it. Just like a lot of these entities that are cut off from spirit. When you are cut off from spirit, you are the Ouroboros. You are the snake eating its own tail. You have to eat life force, okay, in order to continue to exist. You cannot sustain and create and amplify your own energy like all of us spirited beings can do. And so this is one thing that narcissists continually have to re-up on this energy. And when you give an emotional reaction, man, oh man, are they tapping that line? You're giving them the feed. And they're also unbalancing you, which is easier for them to get what they want. So one way in which you're constantly stuck in this freaking loop of a narcissist or pathological experiences is because you keep getting triggered, okay? By design, they are predatory. They will never stop the hunt. You can almost guarantee that they're always going to be coming at you energetically if they have the ability. MNN says, check my story. So it sounds like you can relate. So it doesn't mean they're always going to be attacking you, because once they register that you put up too much of a fight, and I don't mean actual fight, okay, I just mean you're not an easy prey. You know, most bottom feeders, they're going to go for the easy kill. And it's not even a bottom feeder. If you look into nature, you know, if you don't get to feed like us constantly, like humans aren't built to have ready-made meals every moment of the day. This convenience living and fast food, and I don't even just mean like fast food from the drive-through line. I mean, you can go to the grocery store right now and I can pick up something and eat it immediately. I can get food within 5 minutes, depending on where I live, right? That's not how we were built. We were built to cook and harvest and create and hunt, right? Our bodies were built to maintain these longer periods of fasting, right? And so if you look at a proper hunter in nature, they don't know when they're going to get their next meal. So their energy supply is highly valuable. They are not going to expend more energy than they need. If it becomes too quick, they're going to move on, because it could literally be life or death for them. So if you become a very difficult prey, they're going to stop wasting their time. But often, as a lot of you experience, and suddenly they're back. It's been 5 years. Here they come. Like nothing ever happened. They sure as shit will try again. Okay? So it's not that they're ever going to fully like stop being what they are. They won't. They're always going to be that. But it doesn't mean that you're going to be susceptible to it or be triggered by it. And if you're stuck in this loop with them, and I'm not talking about if you like have a child with them and you're going to always have to deal with them to some capacity. It doesn't mean you're always going to be triggered. I sure hope you don't. This is more important to you than many of us, if that's your situation. But they might always have to be in your life in some way. But it doesn't mean it's got to get your goat. It doesn't mean it has to bother you. And the way in which you can shift that, first of all, is stop being triggered by them. Allow them to exist. They're allowed to be that way. You know, that's their prerogative. That's the way in which they want to experience this life. Okay, that's how it is. Doesn't mean you want to engage with them, but it doesn't mean that they you know, don't need to exist, right? They can do whatever they want to some capacity, you know, and karma's a bitch. It'll come back around, and if they're being illegal, right, we all have repercussions. But by us feeling that, that sense of like, they've done us wrong and we need to have justice and all of these things, that keeps us trapped in the loop. So you have to learn to truly, genuinely, authentically let go and move back into the void space where it doesn't matter what they're doing. And the more you can be in that void, the more you can detach and use these tactical observational tools to understand exactly what they're doing. Because once you have learned the methodology of narcissists and people on the pathological spectrum, it is handbook. It does not vary. It is exact. They will say the exact same phrases universally. It is shocking. If you look at it, it feels so personal to you because you're hyper-triggered and it was really upsetting and whatever. But it is a facsimile. They are all the same, okay? They don't change. If you memorize the formula, you can deal with them like that. But it requires you to have enough maturity and ability to pull yourself out of the chaos and the trigger and the reactivity, step back into your safe void and observe what's happening and go layers behind what's being offered up that is meant to be triggering and see what's really going on. That's your out. And they hate that. They hate it. It scares them. They don't understand it. It's a threat, right? And once they realize that you're not going to budge and that you have so much genuine self-love and value and care and a healthy stoicism, right? They don't want to deal with it. They might be, on the other end, yapping their mouth about you and all these things, but it doesn't matter. It truly, authentically doesn't get you. And that's how you get out of these, overwhelming, life-consuming traps. Knee Deep says, I have watched the narc I am dealing with replace me with someone who is more like how I used to be. Yes, and they always will. And they have harems. And it doesn't mean it's a sexual harem. They're always going to have a group supply. And they're going to, it's a whole thing, right? That we don't have to get into. But, and I totally know what it's like. I know what it's like to be trapped in a narcissistic network, to be scapegoated, to, triangulate all the things. And it keeps going. And it's an endless drama. And they just love that, right? But it doesn't mean you have to be a part of it. And it is a huge learning lesson. If you are somebody who has enough consciousness and are conscientious enough to be able to look at your life and understand that there's always a lesson in everything and there is always a way to overcome this, even if you don't know how yet. The universe's job is the how. The how is not your job, right? Unwavering faith is your responsibility, and that is what will bring you the how. When there's a will, there's a way, okay? So don't know how we're going to get out of this, but we're going to get out of this, right? And if you step back and start to first, one of the hardest things to do once you've calmed down and met your own needs a little bit, is how do I match their energy, right, Mommy Mars? How am I matching their energy right now? It's not that you are necessarily so attractive to them. Yes, I do agree that they know how to snuff out highly empathic, gullible people. I get that. They have a sixth sense, because they were a predator and they utilize their senses. Okay, they're very good at their extrasensory perceptions. Okay, they're astute at it. Imagine if you didn't have the capacity to feel your entire emotional range. Think about all of that energy that's freed up to put towards other things. Okay, they've put a lot of energy and time and focus into sussing out how to feed, like any smart predator does. Okay, so if you start to realize that, yes, that does happen, but when you are a stable, and I'm going to say stable attachment, we can go into that too, Attachment theory is really, really important, guys. You deal with it. If this happens to you a lot, if you've had a lot of these experiences, please start learning your attachment style. It can save your life. We'll go into that in a little bit if you guys want to. But if you have, if you're more stably attached, if you're a healthy person who has very healthy, loving boundaries, and you can recognize these patterns, you are not going to be attracted to this person once they expose their agenda. Charm is charm. Everybody is, a lot of people have their defenses up around charming people because we've gotten burned so many times. For me, a charming person, even though I will engage, I'm already like, what's behind that, right? So it doesn't mean I write them off. I just register that charm is the number one trait in which a narcissist will initially use. It's why they're very popular. They're very gregarious. They're very, very helpful. They will bend over backwards to do things for you that you never asked for. They love bomb everyone, including their friends, okay? Especially if you have something that they respect, like money or status, whatever, right? Pardon me. Sometimes TikTok makes me do a puzzle to make sure I'm a human. Okay. So once they expose themselves to somebody who has balance and loves themselves and has healthy standards and boundaries, that person is not going to want to continue engaging with them at all. So it's important for you to accept that it wasn't all them, that there's a reason in which you continued and proliferated a relationship, ignoring the multitude of red flags that were offered up because they were meeting your needs in some form or fashion. And this can be a very difficult part, but it's very important for us to start taking our own responsibility so we can take our life back and see how are we matching their energy. Because I guarantee you, if you are, and I say this from experience, okay, even if it's triggering to you, I've been here, done that a lot. If you are stuck and trapped in these types of relationships or keep attracting them, you are utilizing the same frequency, it does not mean same tactics, of manipulation to yourself and others in some way. And usually the biggest way you're doing it is if you're somebody who's like over empathetic and compassionate and always trying to help people, you are self-abandoning. Number one way this happens, you self-abandon at the sake of helping others, quote unquote. That's a self-manipulation because you're not doing it for them, you're doing it for you. That's the first thing you got to look at. And that will help free you really quick. Knee Deep says, definitely, I can see that from our conversation earlier. And Reb says, that was me. Yeah, and that was a really, really hard one for me to accept. I was so in my blame that I just did not want to accept, even though I knew it, because I've believed for decades that, I'm attracting to some capacity what's in my field. There's always something that this experience is mirroring to me about myself, but I just have to figure out what it is. If I'm triggered by it, it's me, it's not them, okay? And this is a really hard one to accept, especially when you have been traumatized and betrayed, because it's so easy to clearly put your finger on the wrongs they've done to you. And our defense mechanisms are so, at the forefront to want to protect us that it's a painful thing to put that aside and say, okay, there's something I'm not seeing. But doing it in a way where you're not taking over responsibility, because that's another trap that happens a lot, especially, if you have your own anxious attachment energy and they're a pretty succinct manipulator, they will make you think it's your fault. And you may believe it, because if it's your fault, you can control it and you can make it better, right? So that means there's some light at the end of the tunnel. But that's another huge way we're self-abandoning. So when I say take responsibility, I mean in the real way, okay? And that was very difficult for me to do, but I finally registered that I'm being just as manipulative as them, just in a totally different way. And I did not like that. That really pissed me off. And I had to chew on that for quite a while. And man, oh man, and I'm somebody who likes to talk to themselves and walking around the house just talking to myself and and I had to process that for quite a long time. But I got through it, and ultimately it freed me, and it helped me understand how to be more tactical, right? And it's such a wonderful experience when you get to this point and you just opt out. And you also register the frequency signature of the emotions that they trigger in you. It's meant to trigger disgust. It's meant to trigger repulsion. It's meant to trigger anger. So you stop judging these emotions when they come up. It doesn't mean that you're not emotionally adept if you're having these feelings and reactions. Where you get tripped up is how are you judging what it is you're feeling. You are allowed to feel any way you feel, okay? You don't have to compound it by judging what you're feeling. Of course you feel that way. It's the design of it. It's the entire manipulation. It's meant to make you feel that way. Bullseye. You don't have to judge it, right? And by not judging it, you can realize that what it is you're feeling is the energy that's in their field. Now, this is another thing that I loved learning. We all know this, right? Even if we don't term it this way, even if you haven't thought of it this way, you've experienced this. That emotions are highly contagious, okay? Easiest example of this is road rage. Okay. If somebody's defensive, this is one way I gauge where I am on my emotional maturity and how quick I get defensive. Man, oh man. If I'm in the airport and the TSA gets all snippy with me, man, that'll make me pop off so quick. And I know that one part of that is because there's a lot of electromagnetic frequency around me in technology that's meant to make me do that. But it shows me how quickly I can still get off kilter, and I have to do work on that. And so when you pick up on the contagion of somebody's defensiveness or emotions or energy, and now it gets stuck in your field, it's real sticky, okay? And you mistake it as your own because you're reacting, so you say, I am angry, instead of, I am experiencing anger right now. I feel anger. You didn't own it when you said it that way, but when you are something, you're owning it. When we own that, and when we react on it, it makes it very difficult to recognize that what has actually happened. Because what has actually happened is you have picked up on a contagion in their field. That's their energy. It's floating around like debris. Like, and do you guys remember the animation, the cartoon Peanuts? I don't think it was Linus that had the dirt bubble around him, but that character that always had like the dirt around him everywhere he went, it's, in their fields. And you move close enough, and now it's in your field. And so whenever you're feeling triggered and you're experiencing, I get aghast a lot. That's my word. When gaslighting happens and betrayal, Pigpen, yes, thank you. I always forget the right name. Pigpen is the one with the dirt in his field. Thank you, Rebs. I get aghast. I'm shocked. Like the injustice of this, right? I can't believe somebody would act that way. That's my big thing. It's their energy. So you're reacting to exactly what is in their field. Now, when you own it, it's a reflection of your own work. But just because you're experiencing it and feeling it doesn't mean it's yours. It's in their field, you're picking up on it. And therefore, you can register. Like, for example, going back to that one narcissist I was referring to, the nematode, after a while, I noticed that whenever I was in proximity of this person, or even thinking about this person, I would often get these really like naggy, bickering, bitter thoughts towards this person. And after a few times of that, I realized, oh, that's not my energy. That's theirs, and I'm just picking up on it because we're all radio, we're radio frequencies tuning into that dial. And that made me feel good, because I don't like thinking that way about people. And then I registered, oh, that's in their field. So anytime I'm within the proximity, I'm going to pick up on this funk, right? And so that's a really cool thing to notice as well, that that's just the aura that they hold. So of course you're feeling that way, because that's what they carry in their field. And one thing about why they enjoy when you get triggered, not just because you're an energy supply to them, and you're in a feed, and that they can weaken your barriers for manipulation, but all of us appreciate being seen. So when you, even if it's subconscious, when you are feeling the way somebody else feels, there is a validation. Reb says, can you pick up on their energy even in no contact? Hell yeah. Hell yeah, Rebs. And one big reason why you can pick up on their energy more than other people is well, there's several reasons for that. One is they're very invasive. They will always have monitoring spirits. Knee Deep and I talked about this too today. They're always going to be monitoring spirits in their field. They've already overstepped your boundaries. They're energetically tethered to you, and they're often highly telepathic. So they're imposing into your field even when you're not physically there, which is very easy to do energetically, right? So they're still trying to get that feed, especially if they've already tethered to you, which is very common, because that's what they hope to do. They hope to make a tether, whether it's through love bombing, and or the reaction. It doesn't matter which way. Either way, if they're tethered, they can be siphoning no matter where you are in the world. Mommy Mar says, yes, the monitoring spirits. Yeah, exactly. So yes, Rebs, if you think that's what's happening, I bet you're right. And it will happen more than most people, because they don't have boundaries. So it's very important to have a fortification. And they're often very attuned with energy, even if they're not fully conscious of it. There's like this quasi-conscious, subconscious thing, because they're a predator. Knee Deep says, spiritual gurus too. Yes, I have met or heard a lot of stories from clients where that happens a lot. Now, I hope that's not me, because Knee Deep and I were just talking about how I was in one of her dreams the other day, and I've had a lot of clients say that they've seen me in their dream space. So hopefully that's not me overimposing. Though I've definitely heard experiences where, a spiritual practitioner shows up, and Knee Deep says, LOL, no, I wouldn't think so. But, I think about that. But like I always do, I'm very conscientious about energy and like not invading people's spaces. I tend to think if I show up in somebody's dream and it's really me and not like a sim, that I'm there to help, like an astral friend. But shoot, I just forgot what I was talking about. Oh, so yeah, spiritual practitioners. I've heard of stories where they will like astrally project to people and continue these interactions and healings in a way that feels invasive, and that's absolutely not appropriate. That's like an energetic feed, right? So big boundaries there. Okay, so getting back to, and if you guys have any questions, if you're dealing with anything like this and you need some guidance and or just want to vent, you're welcome to do so. Though I did learn the other day from a phenomenal, I have to get her name. I need to be better about memorizing these names of these videos I'm watching, because I love to reference the information I'm learning. She is a teacher that I follow on attachment styles, and she was talking about what happens to our brain chemistry when we vent and complain. Now, a lot of people vent, especially women. It's one way in which, guys probably do too. I don't know. You guys, let me know. Are you guys big venters? When you get around with the guys, y'all vent a lot? But women, it's one way in which I notice we bond, is we'll tend to offload and vent and talk about our upsets and our emotions, right? That's one way we connect. And there's a lot of you guys know, a lot of old world cultures, man, the elder women, all they do is complain. You know, they just love to bitch and moan. That's the only way they know how to connect and relate to other people. Though this professional of attachment styles is talking about how bad it is to be venting and complaining. It's really, really negative for our brain chemistry, and it's just habituating that loop of negative reinforcement. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, ugh, because I definitely like to talk to my girls and vent. And I'm like, crap, I don't want to reinforce negativity in my brain. Because I have met people that don't complain. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of cultures, but I've experienced a handful of Asian cultures where it's completely uncouth to complain at all. It's just not good in their society. And, you know, if you are somebody who complains enough and you're around somebody who never complains, man, oh man, do you notice real quick that you complain? Right? Because they're not mirroring that back to you. And when that happens, you're alone in this. You're not receiving back the reciprocation or the validation of it's probably a dopamine fix. I don't know. You guys tell me if you know. When somebody's like, yeah, I know what that's like. I totally get what you're saying. This happened to me too. And we're like, yeah, how negative. Oh man, you understand me. You know. Knee Deep says narcissists don't notice. No, and they can pretend they do, that's for sure. But you know, one thing about that is a lot of the ones I've dealt with, they are huge complainers because they're major gossipers. They talk. That's one thing. A lot of them will give themselves away because they cannot shut their mouth. Oh man. Knee Deep says, yep. Yep about that one, huh? Okay, so getting back to the whole point of this discussion in the first place is the void space. So, if you can learn to recognize the frequency of the void, then it is very, very helpful when it comes to tuning into your intuition, in your self-attunement of your body. Because a lot of our aspects, that's what I got off a tangent on and I lost my place. We've all experienced dissociating, cognitive dissonance, fracturing of some form, things like this. And I call it soul fractures, right? That's a common word we throw around in metaphysics and spirituality. If you've had a soul fracture, and all of us have, all of us have inner child wounds, we all have our own emotional trauma, we all have soul fractures. What does that actually mean? Okay, where does that part of your consciousness go? Knee Deep and I were just talking about that. Being out of body is another way you say it, and not in the way of where you're actually pulling yourself out of body, in the way of like you don't know how to ground back in because of our trauma. That part of you goes into the void. That's where they escape off to. When you're young and you're super daydreaming, where is the daydream space? It's in the void. If I have trouble, if I'm like doing what I call reverse engineering timelines, or doing my inner child work, another name for it is parts work, right? If you're retrieving these soul aspects, you will always find them in the void space. Even if you're traveling to their timeline, where do the timelines exist? In the void space. This is where you're going to find them. Mommy Mars says, narcs complain about others' backyards while their own is pretty dirty. Yeah, absolutely, right? Absolutely. Reb says, Mommy Mars, that literally happened with the narcissist I was involved with. LOL. Yeah, and it's amazing. Like, so I've had my fair share of psychopaths too, right? Which is a very unfortunate experience. And at one point, this was after I had already got out of a horrible relationship. This was years ago. Though I was still in the trauma of it, right? Because it takes years. Sometimes people don't get over it. Mama Mars says, LOL, same, Rebs. And I bought this book called Women Who Love Psychopaths, right? Pretty straightforward there. And this book changed my entire life, because it laid out case studies of actual women and conversations that had happened with a psychopath that they had been with. It changed all the names, right? But these statements were verbatim what the other women had experienced from other psychopaths and what I had experienced. The exact same statements. Okay, think about that. You know, different times, different humans, different ages, different countries, different cultures. The word for word verbatim sentences. That's amazing, especially when the experience is so extremely personal, right? It's so personal to deal with these things. And then to find out how very generic it actually is mind-blowing, okay? So while it seems to be unique to your situation, it is very cookie cutter. And again, once you learn the strategy, the blueprint, whatever you want to call it, it becomes really, really simple. Doesn't mean it's easy, but very simple of how to track and navigate all these things. Douglas Stein says examples. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that? Are you asking me to give you examples of the sentences? I actually don't remember what the exact sentence was. I'm sure it was some kind of gaslighting sentence. That's for sure. You know, it's going to be some kind of a, well, it can also be a love bombing sentence. But no, Douglas Stein, this was over 20 years ago. So I don't remember. And I feel a very interesting frequency about your energy as well. I will say that. So getting back to the void space, get very comfortable with the void space, guys, because that is a place, especially if you're having the experience where you recognize you're numb, right? Or a lot of people don't even realize that they've emotionally checked out from, if you're doing soul fragment healing. And it doesn't mean that you're a person that's not emotional. You can be very over emotional, but when you're tracking a trauma and you find that part of you, they may be numb, or you may not even be aware that you had a trauma in the first place because you've deadened yourself to it. Super common. That's why we dissociate as a protection mechanism. And when you tune into a part of you that is numb, or let's say you're trying to connect with a part of you psychically or through your clear aspects, and you can't get a connection, it might not be that you can't connect. It may be that you are connected clearly. It's simply that they're in the void, because the void is an experience of the nothingness. So think about that. That happens a lot, all the time. If somebody tells me they can't tune in, or they don't know, or they don't hear anything or feel anything, for me, it's the void. And so that's where you can start having this experience of the power of deduction, right? And start looking around and sussing this out. And you will find a lot of things in the void. I have had aspects, inner child, and if anybody doesn't know what that means, just ask me and I'll explain it. One time I found this inner child aspect that showed me a very specific experience in my childhood. And I went and tracked her down, and when she fractured, when she had the trauma, she sent that part of herself into the void. And from the etheric experience, backtracking, she knew she did it. She did it consciously. And when I went to track that part of her in the void, the one that sent it said, no, you're not allowed to get it yet. It's on a time release, and you have to track another trauma before you're going to be able to retrieve her. And I let it be. I didn't want to push. And then I forgot about it. And years later, just because I do this work, I found a trauma and I tracked it, and it came back around to that aspect in the void. And I remembered, oh my God, this is the aspect that inner child had sent away. And I found her, and I was able to re-assimilate or reassociate her with my full consciousness. So it's like retrieving. But that's what we do. We send the most precious parts of us into the void for safekeeping. So it's a very intimate space that a lot of us utilize. But a lot of people are very uncomfortable in this space, especially if you're somebody who doesn't like to be alone with yourself, if you don't like tuning in and feeling your own emotions. You know, if you have trouble in those experiences, if you have trouble meditating, a lot of it is because subconsciously or unconsciously, you're not ready or you're scared to tune in to what's actually going on in the void. Mommy Mars says, wow, interesting. Yeah, really interesting. Yeah, it's pretty surprising what a lot of our aspects do. You know, a lot of times and it doesn't mean that they're actually going to want your help. Sometimes they'll fight you on that, especially your teenage ones, right? Mommy Mars says, I need background noise all the time. Oh, that's interesting. That would be it. Do you know why? Do you know why that happens? I bet you that tracks to something. We could dive into it if you wanted, but we don't have to. But yeah, there's all these little things, right? Okay, so anything else I wanted to hit on before I hop off for the day? And if you guys have any questions, I'll be wrapping up soon, so please pop your questions in right now. Let's see, I'm gonna, you know, I meditated earlier and asked Spirit what I should talk about. Mommy Mars says, I don't want to hear all the thoughts in my head, I think. Yeah, I can see that, right? Do you have, Mommy Mars, do you have that experience? Are your thoughts like loud and chaotic, or is it just things you don't want to have to face? I'm just asking you that because I haven't thought about it in a long time, and it came up in a live the other day. But when I was a teenager, I used to have, and it was before bed usually, it was when it got really quiet. And it would be, and I know what it is now. It's more like if you guys have ever had to deal with the handling and all of that, but it would get so loud. And it wasn't like tinnitus. It was like tons of noises all at once in a way where I felt like I can't handle this, it's so loud. And it would just do this thing. It was crazy. And it was at a time in my life when I used to have insomnia. You know, when I finally fell asleep, I would stay asleep, but I couldn't get to sleep. And when I put my head down, it would just be this mass chaos, and there would be no one thought or anything. It was just like so much noise coming from this really weird space. Knee Deep says, I love the void. I think I like it more than here. Yeah. And that's another thing we were talking about, right? Those of us that are more in our upper chakras than our lower chakras, we'd way rather be out of body. It's safer out there sometimes. If we've gone through traumas, it is safer to be in the void space, right? Their body doesn't feel safe a lot of times, especially if we've gone through things. Reb says, so a question I would have is how to fortify against their energy. Okay, Rebs, can you clarify that question? Are you asking me how do you fortify against a narcissist's energy? Can you just specify a little bit more for me before I answer that? Mommy Mars says, things that make me sad, memories, and things I can't change. Yeah, I get you. It's tough to deal with these things, isn't it? You know, something that comes up a lot with a lot of clients over the years, and I felt this for so long. When you're a spiritual warrior, or you know, even if you're not spiritual, let's say you're religious, or you're just devoted to your practice of healing in whatever way that is. There's infinite ways that all of us show up to heal ourselves or help ourselves. But in whatever capacity you do it, you're dedicated to it. You're devoted, right? And it's hard. It's painful. It feels like drudgery. And you've done it for years, and you're so consistent, and you do it so much, and you pull up so much emotions, and it never stops. It just goes on and on and on and on. And there is this relatable experience when we're these types of people, where you get to this point and you're just fed up, and you're like, it never stops. When is it ever going to end? When am I going to get a break? When is enough enough, right? And that was a very difficult challenge, hurdle for me to get over. And one way in which I was able to get over that, Mommy Mars, was you say right there, things that make you sad and memories and things you can't change is why you don't want to hear all your thoughts, right? And that makes me wonder if you judge your pain. I came to a place of finding this like intimacy in my pain. And not in a way where I indulge in it. I've done that plenty. I've played victim a lot in my life. I mean, man, oh man, have I been a victim for most of my life. Probably the first half of my life, more than that, right? I played the victim. Even though I was dedicated to figuring out how not to be, I still indulged in it while I was trying to figure it out. And when we do that, we're like really indulgent in the pain, right? And that's not necessarily the conscious intention. Even when we're doing the work, it's sometimes it's even that much more painful, not because we're empathic, even though we are, because we're judging the pain. Because there's so much sweetness in the sadness and in the pain and the memories. And it's your most tender, vulnerable space. It's your most precious, valuable part of you, in my opinion, is the parts of you that are still stuck in that pain. And the more inner child work I did, the more I began to become extremely tender and nurturing and loving towards my pain. And like, you got to get really comfortable with the uncomfortable. And so after I got to that place, and it wasn't just like a blind leap of faith. It was because I've had so many experiences of doing this work and having proof that by going through that pain, I would then be liberated. And I would be just so much more free in a way that I don't ever remember being, because as long as I can remember, I had that pain, you know, and you have to go through it to get out of it. And I totally get not wanting to go through it. It's very difficult. But when clients come to me and you know, they have that upset where like, is it ever going to stop? And, you know, like a friend used to say to me, chop wood, carry water. You know, that's a Buddhist saying of like, no, that's life. You know, they say, and I don't know if I believe it, but you know, a lot of scientists like to say we're like 95 to 99% of our consciousness is in the sub or the un. We're only aware of like that much. So it's always going to be, there's always going to be more. Always going to be more. Especially if you want to keep being better. And that is not awesome, you know? But it's like, it is what it is. And when we've had enough experiences of having very clear, direct outcomes by going through the pain, and the outcome, it clearing and healing, you know it's totally worth it. And another thing that I think about a lot in this regards, Mama Mar says, yeah, you hear me. Yeah. Is that either way, you're expending the energy. Now, I get that we're not consciously always aware of how much energy is being expended by us harboring our subconscious trauma. It's a tremendous amount, I'll tell you that. It is way more energy and work for us to continue to harbor and hoard our trauma, as we're all doing through our subconscious and unconscious selves, than to have that conscious marathon of moving through the pain in a way where you're doing it to clear it once and for all. It's way more energy to stay in it, but it takes a lot more conscious awareness to move through it. And that's one thing I like to think about when I don't want to do it, but I know I gotta, this is gonna suck, right? But I don't want to keep expending all this extra energy. I'm exhausted. I'm so exhausted and heartbroken and depressed, I can't even get my ass off the couch. I didn't take a shower today because I don't have the energy. So, you know, you get to a point with those kind of experiences where you're like, okay, I'd much rather be spending this energy in a way where it's efficient. And, you know, and we all have our, you know, not all of us get out of it, but you know, I totally get it. It's scary to face this stuff. And I guarantee you, you know, all those parts of you are waiting for you in the void, and they'll be there when you're ready. And they're probably very safe there, so it's okay. Reb says, yes, how to fortify against a narcissist's energy. Okay, Rebs, well, tell me a little bit about where you're at in relation to the narcissist right now, because it depends on what stage you're in and how the relationship dynamics are going. Because it's very different in different stages. So, give me a little nugget here. Are you like over it and it's said and done and you guys have physical distance, but you might be susceptible to it because you reminisce? Are you in the thick of it and you're highly triggered and you guys are going back and forth a lot and you're still talking and you do this love bombing devaluation cycle? Where are you at here? Or are you just thinking about, in general, you've had these experiences and it's bound to come back around again in your life and you want to know how to make sure you don't fall into that same trap? Because there are very different skill sets in different times and places of where you're at when you are dealing with narcissistic relationships. Reb says, recently divorced, no contact. I feel like I'm doing well, but dreaming about him in a bad way a lot. Okay, so in the dreams, is he coming at you? Reb says, I'm thinking of him a lot. Can you give me a little bit of understanding what the dreams are like? Is this like in the dream space you're being attacked? Are you venting on him? Are you in danger in your dreams, or are they just highly emotional? You did mention earlier, you asked if they have the ability to access you in no contact. So if you give me permission, Rebs, I'll tune into your energy right now, but I need your consent to do that, and I'll help give you specific guidance on this. You say, for the dream space, him following me or fighting with me. Okay. Yeah, okay. So I take that yes as a permission. And it just made me realize, oh my God, we went through this whole time and I never said a prayer or did my clearing work. So let's do that now. Spirit, we recognize you as an omnipotent protector and creator. Thank you for your everlasting and unending care and devotion and love to us. We seek to be as devoted and as loving as caring towards you and inevitably ourselves as well. Please, Spirit, assist us to access your energy, your divine will, and to become aware of our ignorance and our mistakes. Please help us to stay on the path and be clear on what it is you are trying to help us get back on that path. Thank you for filtering out all negativity, evil eye, and energy that does not assist us in any form or fashion. Thank you, Spirit, for helping all of us connect as a community through one heart and your divine care and joy. We are a family united as one front. Thank you for forgiving us as we forgive all of those who trespassed against us. And help me right now, Spirit, to offer Rebs the guidance that they require in order to protect them from the wounding that they're experiencing with an individual that they no longer desire to be connected to through and through, Spirit. Also, please assist in offering this person what it is that they need to know in order to help themselves and to feel safe in their own mind, their body, to reset their nervous system. Thank you for your love, for your protection, for your guidance. We appreciate you. As above, so below, and so it is, thy will be done. Okay, Rebs, give me a sec. I'm going to tune into your energy, honey. Okay, so the first thing I get is interesting, and I just heard, never heard this before. I have an antique mirror up on this wall, and it just made like a, which is like if wood swells or something, it just made a little popping noise, which speaks to me of an open portal. Okay, thank you, Mommy Mars. And so what I just heard is, and this wasn't Spirit saying it, I heard he is a villain. He's dangerous. I need to get away from him. Okay, and so when I hear that, I feel like I'm tuning into quasi your dream space, but also like another timeline. When I say timeline, I mean lifetime. Past life is the usual term. I don't think that's a suffice term. Of you literally running from this person. And the imagery I get is kind of like, you know those like older 40s movies and 50s movies that were like black and white, and it's like the detective when they used to smoke cigarettes off those long stems, you know, and they've got the brimmed hats and the trench coats, and they're walking down the dark alley at night, and it's been raining, and they're like, I gotta get away, he's dangerous. This is the kind of energy I'm getting from this right now, okay? Mommy Mara says, Humphrey Bogart. Yes, exactly. That's the vibe I've got right here. So this is the feeling. This is like the frequency that's coming in. So I'm just explaining that. Okay, so Spirit, give me more of this. Okay, so I hear Rebs, protect the babies. So is protect the babies this life? Do you guys have human babies or fur babies together? Or is this another timeline I'm tuning into? And there's more than one, right? This is like a multiple here. So in the interim while you're typing, do you know how to do your own, you have adult children, okay. Do you know how to do your own, have you ever done past life regression or inner child healing, things like that? Do you know how to do that? Because you definitely seem to need to clear what I call energetic contracts. Let me know if you know this language. So I have a beef, you guys, with the term soulmates. I used to believe, Reb says no, trying to work on inner child. Okay, I used to believe that a soulmate is like, first, a long time ago, I used to believe your soulmate is what people might refer to now as like a twin flame. And I have my own thoughts about twin flame, but like that's the concept, right? Like you're one and only or whatever. And then after experience, I started to believe soulmate still has that very loving, intimate connection, regardless if they're lover, family, pet, whatever, friend, but it's a positive experience, okay? And now where I'm at with soulmates is, even if you have a positive experience with somebody you might deem as a soulmate, it's highly karmic. And my thing is like, the reason we recognize them, Reb says, he used to tell me we were soulmates. Yeah. So that's a huge red flag right there. Okay. Because, and a lot of us do it, and a lot of us have done it. And I still believe people are my soulmates, but here's my new explanation of what a soulmate is. First of all, when we go into attachment theory, that's a common thing that comes up. They feel like my one and only, my soulmate, like I've known them forever. It's a very familiar experience, right? Because they match your trauma wounds. So anyone who is going to match your trauma wounds is going to feel like a soulmate. It's going to feel like this amazing thing that came from the divine and we're meant to be together, because it's the child clinging on and connecting and bonding with something that feels familiar, which equals home and love to them, even if it's a very perverted type, and I don't mean perverted sexually, but a perverse type of home and love, okay? But for me now as an adult, a soulmate is like somebody I keep looping a damn pattern with life after life. It's so freaking karmic. I'm sick of having the same experience. The reason I recognize them and they're familiar is because I've done it so many times and I'm sick of doing it, you know? So like, I don't want to keep looping this thing. And I'd rather have something fresh. And it doesn't mean I don't want to have any connections with soulmates or those that I've simply known before through other space and time. But I don't fantasize about it any longer. I don't put it on a pedestal, because it's not healthy to put anybody on a pedestal. Okay? So what I'm getting from this, Rebs, is that you guys have these karmic contracts that absolutely have to be cleared. Do some kind of a physical ritual. And you're welcome to book a session with me. We can go all through this if you want. Chloe-Hudson.com. Though, on your own, there's plenty you can do as well. So, you know, I don't know if you have your own releasing rituals or something. It doesn't have to be anything big. This is representational. So what I like to do, like what I did the other day, I love to write in my notebooks, okay? I always keep notebooks. And so now I've got like 20 of them, right? And I just moved and I'm going through these notebooks, and I found this one notebook that is the one that I heartbroken after the last narcissist, right? And I'm like, oh, we're burning this one. Okay, so I sat down and I did my burn ritual, and I always love burning. That's just one alchemical experience I love. Fire and smoke and the burn. I just love that transition and bridge through physical to spirit. So do something that represents a releasing ritual. And I want you to imagine, even if you don't know what they all are, all these lifetimes, how many or what they were or whatever, to imagine that you've had all of these connections with this individual in different forms. Maybe at one time you were his father, and maybe, another time he was your pet, and whatever. It's all, everything and in between. Could be anything, Maybe you guys were warriors and you were enemies and blah, blah, blah. It goes on forever. So you just think about all the ways in which we've been connected throughout all timelines. And all of these timelines are going to have some kind of a familiar theme to what you've gone through with him now, okay? And you're both going to play both sides of this. So you're going to switch victim and villain constantly in these timelines, sometimes often in both. And if you perceive him as a narcissist, then you've done that in both, because I guarantee you guys have gone through that triangulation of victim, savior, aggressor, and we take on all hats all the time. So you kind of bring this into the forefront of how you're going to do your ritual. If you're going to do a burning ritual, or if you're going to, throw organic material into a body of water, or whatever it's going to be for you. There's a lot of ways to do this, right? Or if you're going to stomp it out, or, whatever. And don't cook. I'm just hearing don't cook. Don't make something. We need to get rid of something. Don't consume something, get rid. This is a release. And so you can cook to celebrate after, if that's your thing. Okay. So, and then I want you to imagine that you are, and again, you're tuning into all of these different lifetimes. Another way I'm going to say that is you're multidimensional. Okay, you're currently accessing a lot of different realms and dimensions. And imagine that if every time you guys had some kind of emotional experience, whether you deemed it positive or negative, throughout all of these lifetimes and everything in between, you got cords, and you got tears, and you got hooks, and you got all sorts of stuff in your field. And then you've got all these lifetimes. So now you're looking at yourself and you just look like a complete Borg. Man, you got cords coming out of everything. You got black glue and sludge, and you're leaking stuff, and there's hooks, and there's all sorts of things all over you, okay? And with the power of divine will and your might and your value and all that you are through spirit, through and through, throughout all space and time, you release all of this. You purge it off, you pop off all these tethers, everything goes flying and it gets sucked into spirit, and you filter it out, and you just dump and dump and dump, and you need to scream, you need to shout, you need to hit things, you do what you need to do. You get it all out. And it doesn't mean this is only going to take one go, okay? Get it off of you and out of you, and you release it, and once you pop off a cord, a bunch of gook's going to come out of it, right? Just keep releasing, keep releasing, keep releasing. Knee Deep says, love this, yes. And as you're doing this, go through all of your emotional charge. You're still angry at him. You still blame him. You still hate that you love him. You still get pissed off that you miss him. And you hate thinking about the wonderful times, because then it makes, maybe it was okay that he did that, but it's not. All of this. Go through it, go through it, go through it. You're allowed to feel this way, okay? And tell spirit, throughout all space and time, you hereby revoke, you rebuke, you rescind, you retract, you end. You no longer hold any contracts, cords, connections to the soul and spirit that is currently this man. Because you've got a lot of lifetimes, different names, different bodies, okay? You're done, spirit. Clear out, release all contracts, all cords, all tethers, seen and unseen, known and unknown, throughout space-time. End all marriage rights. I know that you had a divorce in this lifetime, but do it through all lifetimes. Any blood oaths, right? Any sexual tethers, any lifetimes where you two maybe did ritual and died for each other and professed your love for all eternity. All of these things. release this. And it doesn't matter if he releases it. It's not about him, okay? He's not allowed in your field. If you need to picture him, he's outside of your energy with protection, okay? He's not allowed to access you. And you release all entities and energies and beings that are attached to him that you two have been going back and forth. And then you ask for full forgiveness. Spirit, please help me forgive myself and to forgive him for all interactions and ways in which we have connected and taught each other lessons and everything we've gone through, all the things that I don't know. Please help me let this go. And we forgive not because it's the right thing to do, Rebs. We forgive because forgiveness is the frequency of 0 point energy. Forgiveness equals the same frequency bandwidth as acceptance and allowance and detachment, things like this, right? That bandwidth is so imperative for letting go and accessing the void space, neutrality. If you, where's my magnet? Hold on now. Oh, I bet it's in another room. Darn. Okay, if you take 2 magnets, to the naked eye, it seems as if the magnet is magnetized to the other end of a magnet. But if you were able to look at it at these 2 magnets with a very high, a strong microscope, there would be, it's called a plane of inertia. There's an invisible space in between these magnets. They're not actually touching. That space is called the plane of inertia, otherwise known as the null point, otherwise known as the void, otherwise known as forgiveness. It's the most magnetic thing in existence, okay? When you forgive, you access true alchemy and you magnetize freedom. Super potent. You got to do forgiveness. Go for Ho'oponopono. And do this big ritual for yourself, okay? And let it all go. And if you emote and wail and get exhausted and need to sleep and can't get out of bed for a week, good job. You did something right, okay? So that's like step 1. And then you go to my website and go to chloe-hudson.com. There are free resources in my shop. Knee Deep and I were just talking about this. There are revocations. There are, I do not consent. There is a spiritual exorcism. They're free. You might just have to go through a checkout process, but it's free. Get those and say those with him in mind. Okay, go through these, and these will rescind these contracts, layers and layers over space and time. Before you go to bed, you state out loud, I do not consent to his energy in my field. I do not engage with this human being. I do not consent to him imposing his energy into my thought forms. I forgive myself for having thoughts of him. I draw back my energy and I command his out of my space. Okay? And the more you do these types of things, the more you're going to fortify your boundaries energetically, and the more it will push his energy out of your field. And especially with dream time, okay? And when you wake up in the morning and you've had these dreams, you do another revocation. I do not consent to any of the interactions and exchanges being absorbed, right? I forgive it and I let it go. Hey, Urban Alchemistic. You say, hey, Miss Chloe, hope all is well. Great topic for today. Thank you so much. Good to see you. Rebs, does that answer your question? Do you have any other questions for me? But rituals are huge, guys, especially when you want to get rid of the cords. Oh, one thing I didn't say, which is like the biggest thing. You're welcome, Rebs. Oh my God, do a sexual body clearing. Huge, huge, huge. I need to add this to my website as well. Sexual body clearing is so very important, you guys. One of the most efficient ways for anybody to cord to us is through a sexual body, okay? And it gives them all access to our astral body, our etheric body, our psychic body. Man, it's just a direct line. It's a very efficient way for them to access us telepathically after the fact. So you want to revoke their access into your sexual body. And you would do the same process basically as the releasing. And you can do it with all of your partners, even your current partner. It's great to do it with your current partner. The reason being for that is because our sexual body is like a web. So even if you like have only had a few partners, they've had a few partners, you know, and they've had a few partners, and on it goes. And you guys are all connected through the sexual web, right? And also it's like this sexual internet. And theoretically, they can all access each and every person through these. Yeah, ew, I know. And this is the main reason why women do this a lot. Men do it too, but like if you pick up on your current partner's past partner, it's through that sexual web, man. You feel them in their field. You know, they're still pressing. It's because you are now tethered to all of them. So you're even more attuned into their energy, accessing your partner's energy. So you want to do sexual cord cuttings. So even if it's your current partner, it is great to clear these cords because you will, it's not like you're letting go of your connection with them. You don't need cords. You don't need to be corded and tethered to people. You can be heart to heart connected, right? And you don't want their past partners in your field, so you can do like a cleaning every once in a while. It's great, you know? And so do this, Rebs, with him as well. Imagine that you are releasing all of your sexual connection to this human and this spirit and soul throughout all lifetimes, okay? And you basically revoke him out of your sexual body. You no longer consent, and use the power of your spoken word. I want you to spell cast this, right? And the more you refortify this with spoken word, clap your hands, stomp your feet, turn in circles, okay? Get it out and revoke access to your field. Revoke access of him accessing you through your children, even energetically. So think of all these things. And the more you do this, the first thing that might happen, Rebs, is he might buck. You might see the entities in him get disturbed by this because they're losing the access. They're losing that feed. You know it's working. Keep doing it. Just keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. It helps a lot. And another big thing that's going to help you is the forgiveness. I absolutely adore Ho'oponopono. There are huge practices around Ho'oponopono. It is a really, really efficient way in which to access that null point energy. And you know, set your mind to that. Do that every day for a month, even if it's like 2 minutes of whatever you're going to do. These revocations, it'll change your life. Come back to me and let me know, and we'll all support you. Hoo-dee-hoo! And just to top that, everybody who has loving, good energy, please see that Rebs is now free and clear of their past husband that they no longer want connection with energetically. We support that this human, this soul, this spirit leaves her in peace forevermore, and that she can heal fully and completely and come back to a place of her own joy and her own happiness and safety and freedom in her own boundaries and energies and spaciousness and allowance to move on. Thanking Spirit for helping her to embody full forgiveness, and so that one day she may choose to open up to a new love, and even if she doesn't, she fully opens up to loving herself. Thank you, Spirit. As above, so below, and so it is. Thy will be done. Boom. All right, Rebs. You got it now. You got the power of the Spirit in this room. Can you feel it? Okay, guys. So, any other questions or comments before I hop off? I'll probably hop off right on the hour. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. I really appreciate you. I just love connecting with you guys. I wish I could see you, though. I really am so thankful that you guys comment. It makes it so fun to interact, and I'm always open to answering any of your questions. I'm open to your wisdom and your stories. It's so wonderful to have community. I know, Knee Deep and I were just talking about this earlier. It can seem to be a lonely road, and this road of spirituality and consciousness. And there are so many of us out there that are open to wonderful connections with community. And we just, and a car alarm just went off. So we second that, right? And there is places where we are here to come together. And I hope, and I ask Spirit to help all of this wonderful community that haven't found us yet. Come one and all. Let's connect. Let's help each other. Let's build wonderful relationships and support and help each other heal and reminisce. And we won't vent, but we'll just heal. Right? Okay, guys. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a wonderful week. This is actually a really big week astrologically. There's like so much up and down energetically, so be kind and gentle with yourself this week, guys. A lot of things happening. And again, I didn't say it this live, but let us take a moment and send true, genuine world peace. Thank you, Spirit, for helping all of us. You're welcome, Mommy Mars. That authentically desire this world to find peace, calm, an ethical and moral way in which we are able to negotiate with other cultures and countries and nations, and have these people be heard, and release the responsibilities and the powers from a select few and truly distribute it to the whole so that we can all be well received and heard and find a balance and higher ethical moral society. Knee Deep was talking about this earlier. We would like to call back in Spirit the timelines and the dimensionalities and the realities in which we all came together as a collective and a higher consciousness in which we found peace and ability to make the wrongs right in a way that suited the whole. Spirit, we understand that you have offered us and endowed us with such a tremendous amount of sovereignty and power. And we ask for your forgiveness, Spirit, that we don't remember. We are ignorant to the ability to up-level that power, to utilize it and alchemize it in a way that makes true change. And I understand, Spirit, that there's mass illusion happening in this world and has been happening that leads us to believe that we don't have the ability to make change, that we are insignificant and something that we do won't do much. And I understand that that is in its own way, what's the word? It's like, what's the word, guys, when you're taking the Lord's name in vain? It's like its own sin. It's not true, right? There is a African proverb that I love so much, and I'm paraphrasing again. It says something to the effect of, if you think that you're too small and insignificant to matter, just spend the night with a mosquito. Right, Spirit? So allow us all to connect through our energy and our will and our desires and our needs to live in peace and to be free and to have clean, healthy food and water, and our animals and our pets and our children to be safe and to uprise and overcome this AI consciousness that is not spirit embodied. Thank you for helping us remember how to give our world back to ourselves, and how to remember that we are a steward of this beautiful Mother Earth who offers her body freely to us. We do not choose to desecrate it, but we hope to help it become a Garden of Eden once again. Thank you, Spirit, for helping everybody that is with us and that we love and care about, past, present, future, to also be healed and to be cared for and supported, and help us understand what it is that you desire for us in our higher divine timeline. Impress upon our minds and our hearts and our consciousness what it is that we need to do for ourselves and others in order to align ourselves with a more genuine, authentic self-love. We appreciate you, Spirit. Never give up on us. Thank you for constantly helping us remember how much we love you and we love ourselves, and all the times we have forgotten who we are and our power. Continue to remind us, Spirit. Thank you through and through. As above, so below, and so it is, thy will be done. Douglas Stein says, Ho'oponopono is awesome. Helped me through a tough time a couple years ago. Peace, peace, peace. Yes, I love Ho'oponopono, man. You guys, I love it so much. My favorite line in Ho'oponopono, and again I'm paraphrasing, but there's something that it to the effect it says, like, if you do the full Ho'oponopono prayer, it says, while something to the effect of, like, while I have so much that has harmed and hurt me, I ask forgiveness from this individual for all the times that I have harmed them in some past life. And man, I just love that line because, I finally grounded through and through that if something is happening to me in a way where I feel I'm being attacked or victimized, I am positive that I have been an attacker and I've done something to them in another past life. And we've probably gone back and forth many times. And that right there dissipates the energy so completely. That turns it on its head. And that's another way, Rebs, to really authentically heal. When you go through these forgiveness practices and every little thing that triggers us, every thought, and we learn to ask them for forgiveness, ask the situation for forgiveness, right? It really does this amazing alchemical shift in the energy and the frequency, and they feel it. They might not know exactly what they're feeling, but they feel it. And it is mind-boggling. When you go through these experiences and you fully do the drudgery to heal this and go through the forgiveness, these people will be astonished. They will not understand how this happened. They cannot fathom, because you will forever be trapped in their mind as a picture they have taken of you in your weakest moment, and that's who you are to them. And once you come shining through out better on the other side and you're just doing great and, let bygones be bygones, their head explodes. They can't get it. It's awesome. It's just fun to know, Those are the things you can revel in. It's like, I trust that there's karmic retribution, and I try not to, you know how you can get into that space of like, yeah, they're going to get theirs. I try not to do that. Though, when I know it's coming, I'm like, yeah, it's about right. But I do feel good about reveling in they're just shocked. They can't fathom how you can move into such a different way of yourself and come out the other end looking better, feeling better, sounding better, and that's an awesome experience, guys. Okay, everybody, high five. High five. I'll be back tomorrow, Thursday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. I am Chloe Hudson. My website is chloe-hudson.com. Please check it out. A lot of free resources there. You can sign up for my email list. And I've got a lot of videos on my YouTube channel. If you guys want, I used to do a lot of teaching videos too. There's like 10 plus years of videos back there. If you want to learn any of these topics, I dissect a lot of what we talked about. Thank you. Love you guys so much. Have a great night. Bye for now.